Well, welcome back to the news today. This is One-on-One. Well, Dr. Ruth Calderon, an Israeli academic and politician who currently serves as a member of parliament for the Yesh Atid party here, headed by Finance Minister Yair Lapid, joins us now. Thank you for being with us here.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to start by asking, you have a background in academics and various other things which we'll touch on, but how is life in politics?
It's fascinating. I enjoy it. It's like learning a new language. And you learn yourself while you're learning a language. It's a very interesting, fascinating kind of world, the Knesset. And it's much more serious, professional, and smart than I used to think about it from the outside.
So your impression has changed since
was,
entering
yes.
the Knesset?
Especially the Knesset members that, you know, from the outside they are looked at in different certain ways. From the inside, I was impressed with the professionality, with the wisdom, with the hard work. It's a good place.
It's definitely a serious place. Certainly no shortage of serious issues to deal with at all times. This is a government that has a lot on its plate, for sure. So you come in with the Yesh Atid party, a new party in the government that essentially swept the elections, won 19 seats in the election, I think beyond the expectations, perhaps even of yourselves.
Of course.
I know I think you were listed 13th on the party list. Were you surprised to be elected?
I was completely surprised.
Wow.
I did not expect to get in. And all of us, as you know, are not politicians from, you know, it's not our profession, and each of us has done something else for our careers. So it was, yes, it was an amazing kind of landing, and not all the Knesset was so happy to find us there, but we're there to stay, and it's a good word. It's a very good kind of, you feel every day. I'm used from the Talmud to the negotiations and the give and take, but in the Knesset at the end you vote and you make decisions, and I feel honored, and I feel it's a very important thing to do.
And your party's leader, Yair Lapid here, the finance minister now, took on a tough job here in the government now. Yeah. Did that surprise you, him taking on that portfolio, that role?
Actually, he did surprise me. He surprises me quite a few times. But in that sense, it was so natural that he will take the foreign ministry, and he took the tough job, and he's doing an amazing work. He's very strong-minded and very stubborn and a hard worker, and I believe he will do it.
So the party is sort of bridging some of the spectrum here between right and left, especially now with this conflict in the summer, essentially, of conflict here, and with Lapid being part of the coalition, or being part of the Prime Minister's inner team here. It's deciding on many of these matters here now. How have you felt as a member of this party in terms of how this has been managed, or how that Yair Lapid has managed this from being within?
It is a center party, and within it, I think it's a new thing in Israel that some of us are religious and some secular. Some are from Ethiopia that came into Israel, or from Russia, and some Israeli-born. Some more tending center-left and some more center-right. The discussions within the party, when we put an issue on the table, is fascinating and I think very important, because when we come out with a decision of the party, it's center. It comes out, it listens to, and it kind of contains the different ways of seeing things, and we try to bring a serious, responsible center position, which is the majority of Israelis, you know, but usually you hear the far left or the far right, the very orthodox or the very secular, and we try to balance. You know, compromise in Hebrew is not a good word. In English, it's a very good word. You compromise.
It's a positive word.
Yeah, certainly. And here and we want to move it from negative to positive, to compromise in a serious adult way.
Well, in terms of the conflict with Hamas and the Gaza Strip now, there have been extreme calls, for example, from the foreign minister, Lieberman, calling for complete recapture of the Gaza Strip now. Do you think Lapid would support something like that, a move from that side of the spectrum in terms of a harder position on the conflict in Gaza?
I think Lapid is holding a very interesting new kind of proposition. What he says is that we have to move out of the close-up of us and the Hamas, which is a debate that goes on for years, and, you know, we change the partners, but nothing really changes. And he says if we will bring in a big Veida,
a greater discussion, or
a bigger discussion of Egypt and Saudi Arabia and America and Canada and Japan and all the countries that have
to hold the regional conference, this concept that he's put forward.
Exactly.
Here, right?
So if you have a regional, thank you for the word, conference, then the issue that was not being able to be solved in the close-up might be in the smaller scale, might be looked at in a new way.
What do you think the chances are for this conference to take place, involving many of the players you mentioned now, these countries that don't sit down regularly together to discuss issues? Do you think this conference can take place?
Everything changed in the Middle East in the last 5 or 6 years. And usually we look at the bad side of the change, but this change might also bring about new possibilities and a regional getting together and thinking about our future, because we are neighbors, and this tough neighborhood was known to not talk to each other, and it might not only because of the goodwill of everyone, but because of what they need from the Middle East. I believe it could surprise us.
I'd like to change direction slightly here and talk about Israeli society in relation to the broader conflict and some things we've seen this summer, some of the more extreme elements from within Israeli society showing their ugly head here in this conflict, from the kidnapping of the Palestinian youth in East Jerusalem here. More recently, we've seen some very negative protests outside of an interfaith wedding just a few nights ago.
Someone, by the way, it wasn't interfaith because she became Muslim, but it was a Jewish woman.
The concept of interfaith being protested there. And your background is interesting for this. You have a PhD in Talmudic studies, one of the Talmud, one of the central rabbinical Judaism texts here, and you're a secular person yourself. So I know that you lead an organization, and you used to have a television show as well, where you facilitated discussions about many of these things. Do you think that Israeli society in some way has become radicalized over the last 10 years, for example, towards the Palestinians, or are the extremist acts that we've seen this summer truly an outlier now?
I think what happened this summer is there's a lot of fear. People live within this bombing. Even in Tel Aviv, when you hear the siren, it's very scary, and fear brings out sometimes the worst in us. And a long time of being all the time not secure does not do good to human beings. Still, of course, terrible people. I saw evil. I saw raw, mamash evil in people, which I don't think I ever saw before in Israel. Now, what I did learn from the Talmud is that dispute is the way for knowledge and for wisdom. And that when we talk about things and do meet the other and understand where they come from, a good Talmudic scholar is able to give a good presentation to the other, and not to his own ideas, but to the ideas that oppose him. Once we're able to do that and to speak to people, I believe it's the beginning of coming out of the conflict. I was shocked by the kidnap of the 2 young Israeli students and the murder, and then the killing of the young Arab boy. It was really, I think, one of the lowest places that we've been at. But it is, what I thought is that it is human. There's something in humanity that when we are very scared and threatened, we should get ourselves, and we as leaders of Israel should make an effort to get people out of this situation of fear and try to find the long-term solution of peace and quiet. I still believe in even real peace in the Middle East, but Prime Minister is talking about quiet, and I respect that. There's something mature about saying, for the time being, it won't be, Vegar ze'ev in keves, a wolf and a sheep living together, but quiet.
Well, very, very good to have you here today, and of course, to get your perspectives on some of the current events and on the broader picture here of things taking place in Israel. Certainly a society that's been somewhat under the international microscope. So this summer in particular. But
I would like to add just a few
sentences. We're running out of time, unfortunately.
Just to say that it's very important for me that the Jews that live outside of Israel will feel that this is their home and that we
Dr.
see
Ruth Calderon, thank you very much.
Thank you.